Sunshine Coast, Queensland, Australia, Sunday, December 7th, 2003. A 13-year-old boy in a red Billabong t-shirt and navy blue shorts leaves his family hobby farm in Palmwoods just after 1 p.m. He has a $100 note in his wallet, a Commonwealth Bank key card, a student card, a video store card. He is walking 1.3 kilometers to the bus stop under the Keel Mountain Road overpass on the Nambour Connection Road. He is going to the Sunshine Plaza shopping center. He wants to get a haircut. He wants to buy Christmas presents for his family. He has made this trip many times before, usually with his twin brother, Bradley. This time, he goes alone. He never comes home. What follows is 8 years of searching, the largest criminal investigation in Queensland's history, 10,000 police interviews, more than 500 persons of interest, a family that refuses to give up, and one of the most extraordinary undercover operations ever conducted on Australian soil. This is the story of Daniel Morcombe. Daniel James Morcombe was born on December 19, 1989 in Melbourne. The family moved to the Sunshine Coast in 1993 and settled in the small town of Palmwoods. He had a twin brother, Bradley, an older brother, Dean, and parents, Bruce and Denise, who would one day become two of the most recognized faces in Australian child safety advocacy. Bruce said the quality he always admired most in his son was his generosity, his genuine care for other people. Daniel was shy around most people but enthusiastic and full of boundless energy around his family. He was well-mannered, a good timekeeper, well-behaved. He loved the outdoors, he loved animals. He had a pet pony. He and his brother worked picking passion fruit part-time for their neighbors, the Paxton family. He loved motocross, and he had dreams of becoming a vet when he was older. His brother would later speak of how Daniel had asked them both to come to shopping with him that day. Both said no, they had plans, so Daniel went alone. It was a mild Sunday afternoon on the Sunshine Coast. Daniel walked the 1.3 kilometers from his home and arrived at the bus stop beneath the Keel Mountain Road overpass. It was an unofficial stop, not marked on any timetable, but Daniel and his brothers had used it many times before. The 1:35 p.m. Sunbus had broken down nearby. Daniel didn't know that. He stood and waited. Witnesses later described seeing him standing at the edge of the road, bored, drawing shapes in the mud with a stick to pass the time. He waited for more than 30 minutes, and around 2:14 p.m. a replacement bus came through. Daniel tried to flag it down. He waved. He stepped towards the road. The driver saw him, gave him a thumbs-up signal and kept driving. The bus was running late. The stop was unofficial. The driver radioed the depot to send another bus. Passengers on the bus saw Daniel standing at the edge of the road, a boy in a red shirt waving a stick, trying to get on. They also noticed something else. A man standing on the embankment behind Daniel, leaning against the wall, arms crossed, watching. Several passengers described him as gaunt, scruffy, with a tattoo and a goatee. He didn't try to flag the bus. He wasn't waiting for a bus at all. The next bus arrived 3 minutes later. Daniel was gone. The bus stop was completely deserted. It was later determined that Daniel disappeared in a window of approximately 90 seconds. At 4:15 p.m., Bruce and Denise began to grow concerned. Daniel should have been home hours ago. Denise set off to walk to the bus stop. On the way, she saw the broken-down Sunbus being loaded onto a tow truck. Daniel was nowhere to be seen. She called the bus company. They confirmed no one matching Daniel's description had been picked up that day. At 7:30 p.m., Bruce and Denise went to the Maroochydore police station to report their son missing. The officer suggested Daniel had probably stayed out late or was running behind with friends. He did not list Daniel as a missing person that night. Bruce said he felt the report was not being taken seriously. By next morning, December 8th, everything changed. Police established a major incident room. State emergency services volunteers flooded the area. Rescue helicopters searched overhead. Police divers combed the waterways and dams. Over 400 people attended a community vigil. Bruce and Denise became regular faces in the media, appealing, pleading, keeping Daniel's face in front of the nation. A reenactment was held. A life-size clay model of Daniel and the man seen behind him at the bus stop was placed at the exact location where he had disappeared. Within days, more than 300 new tips came in. Over 2 million leaflets were distributed. Daniel's face appeared on milk bottles. Crime Stoppers received more calls about this case than any other in its history. A $250,000 government reward was announced, the largest in Queensland history at that time. A further $750,000 was donated privately. And still, no Daniel. Months became years. The family stayed in their home for 4 years, just in case Daniel came back. Eventually, they made the heartbreaking decision to move. His belongings were exactly as he had left them on that Sunday afternoon. Bruce even began conducting his own covert operation, personally interviewing sex offenders in the area who claimed to have information. Nothing came of it, but Bruce and Denise never stopped. 2 weeks after Daniel disappeared, December 21st, 2003, detectives Dennis Martin and Ken King from Task Force Argos drove up to the driveway of a house in Biwa. They were working through a list of known pedophiles in the area. One of the names on the list was Peter Cowan. Martin noticed something immediately. The yard was full of windmills, painted with butterflies, little decorative things a child would be drawn to. Cowan had no young children of his own. Martin turned to King and said quietly, "That's a bit strange, mate. It just looks like a kid's area." Then they went inside and started asking questions. Cowan was described as skinny and cocky, every movement accentuated. He was cooperative on the surface, but something was off. He admitted he might have driven along the Nambour Connection Road around the time Daniel disappeared. He denied seeing anyone at the bus stop. Martin pressed him, "You're a pedophile, a bad one by the sounds of it, and Daniel is in your preferred age group." Cowan responded, "Well, he looked it." Martin froze. "Did he? That's strange. I thought you said you didn't see anyone." Cowan backtracked immediately. "Oh well, I might have pulled over." Martin said to him, "So now we've established 2 things. First, you've pulled over and you reckon you've seen Daniel, and second, you're a liar." From the moment Martin and King left Cowan's house that December afternoon, they were both certain this was their man. They briefed the major incident room the following day. Martin's report was clear. "He is your main suspect. Everything should be done to rule him in rather than trying to rule him out." The report was quietly dismissed. Cowan's computers were never seized, and Peter Cowan walked free. Peter Cowan was born September 18, 1969. He began sexually offending against children at the age of 9 or 10. By the time he was 18, he had preyed on an estimated 30 victims. In 1987, he was working at a daycare center in Brisbane when he lured a 7-year-old boy named Tim to the bathroom. Tim refused to go. Cowan grabbed him and forced him inside. He sexually assaulted Tim, then wrapped his hands around the boy's throat and told him he would kill him if he ever told anyone. A daycare worker called Tim's name. At that moment, Tim believes if she hadn't come looking for him right then, he would have died. He later said that although he survived, he still feels like Brett Cowan took his life that day. Cowan was charged, given bail, and went on the run for 2 years before being found in New South Wales. Tim found the courage to testify against him in court. He sat on the stand and watched as Cowan sat across from him, smiling as if the whole thing were a game. Cowan was sentenced to 2 years. He served less than 1. He moved to Darwin, told people he was a reformed Christian, that he had found God. Within a short time, he abducted a 6-year-old boy from a caravan park. He sexually assaulted the child, then left him for dead in the boot of a burnt-out car. The child managed to get out. He stumbled to a petrol station for help. His collarbone was broken. One of his lungs was punctured. His eyes were hemorrhaging from suffocation. When police asked Cowan at the later inquest whether he had strangled the Darwin child, he said, "Could be possible, yes." He was sentenced to 7 years. He served 4. 4.5 years total for 2 attacks on young children, one of which he had left for dead. A psychiatrist who assessed Cowan described him as a pathological liar with mild psychopathy and a severe lack of empathy. He was released from prison in 1997 or 1998. He completed parole on the Sunshine Coast, living with his aunt and uncle who were pastors at the Christian Outreach Center in Wombe, the same church that sat directly beside the bus stop where Daniel was waiting. He met his wife Tracy at that church. They married in September 1999 and moved to Biwa. On the night of December 6, 2003, the night before Daniel disappeared, Peter Cowan was on the internet for 6 hours until 4 a.m. He acknowledged he had been looking at pornography. The next morning, he got in his white Mitsubishi Pajero. This was what Peter Cowan told undercover police officers in 2011. He was driving home along the Nambour Connection Road when he passed the broken-down Sunbus. He saw Daniel standing alone at the bus stop under the overpass. He drove into the car park of the Christian Outreach Center, his church, and concealed his vehicle behind a stand of trees. He walked down to the bus stop. He stood on the embankment behind Daniel. He watched. He waited. He made sure it was clear. When the replacement bus drove past without stopping, Cowan walked towards Daniel. He told him he had been waiting for someone on that bus. He offered Daniel a lift to the Sunshine Plaza. Daniel was 13 years old. He had been waiting alone for more than 30 minutes in heat. The next bus was coming, but nobody knew when. A man from his church was offering to take him where he needed to go. Daniel got in the car. Cowan did not drive to the Sunshine Plaza. He drove 30 minutes south to an isolated abandoned property at 510 Kings Road in the Glasshouse Mountains. Daniel's father Bruce later said he must have known something was wrong as the roads got narrower and that area became less and less familiar. Denise said when he was a little boy, he used to get scared at night and come and sleep on the floor next to our bed. Cowan led Daniel inside the abandoned house. He attempted to sexually assault him. Daniel said no. He resisted. He struggled. In his words to the undercover police, Cowan said, "I never got to molest him and he panicked and I panicked and I grabbed him by the throat and before I could, he was dead. I was starting to pull his pants down and he said, 'Oh no,' and he started to struggle." He felt a bone break in Daniel's neck. Daniel Morcombe was dead within the hour of getting into that car. He died before his parents even knew he was missing. Cowan dragged Daniel's body down an embankment and disposed of it in thick bushland near an old sand mining site. He threw Daniel's clothing and shoes from a bridge into the Coochin Creek. He returned a week later with a shovel, found a bone fragment, broke it up and buried it, then went back to his life. 8 years passed. The investigation ground on. 500 persons of interest, 10,000 interviews, millions of dollars, hundreds of officers. Bruce even started his own covert operation, interviewing sex offenders personally, following every lead that came to him no matter how unlikely. In 2009, Bruce and Denise called for a coronial inquest to Daniel's disappearance. When the inquest began in October 2010, Cowan was called to give evidence. He walked into the courtroom. Denise turned to Bruce and said quietly, "That's him. I know that's him." On the stand, Cowan was asked about his movements on the day Daniel disappeared. His alibi had holes in it from the beginning, a 45-minute window he had never been able to properly account for. He had at various points claimed to be visiting a friend named Sandra Drummond, but Sandra's partner was at BYRSL that afternoon, which is where Cowan claimed he was visiting them. The alibi collapsed. When asked at the inquest whether he had anything to do with Daniel's disappearance, Cowan looked at Bruce and Denise directly. "I had nothing to do with Daniel's disappearance. Nothing at all." The inquest ended in April 1st, 2011. Cowan boarded a plane back to Perth. A police officer was already seated on that plane. His name was Joe Emery. What followed was one of the most extraordinary undercover operations in Australian history. 36 undercover police officers from Queensland, Western Australia and Victoria. Joe Emery befriended Cowan on the plane and introduced him to a world he has never been a part of before, a powerful, wide-ranging criminal gang, money, status, respect. Over 4 months, Cowan was gradually drawn deeper. He dealt drugs for them, collected fake debts, bought and sold weapons, ran illegal crayfish. He was paid for his work. He felt trusted, valued. He bragged to his new friends that police could never pin Daniel's disappearance on him. He didn't know his every word was being recorded. He was introduced to his closest confidant, Paul Fitzsimmons, an undercover officer. He was told about a massive job coming, one that would earn him $100,000. But first, he had to prove his loyalty to the big boss. A fake corrupt police officer named Craig told the gang about a new subpoena. Cowan was going to be called back to give more evidence at the inquest. This created urgency. Cowan had to prove himself now. August 9, 2011, the Swan River Room, the Hyatt Hotel in Perth. Cowan sat across from a man he knew as Arnold. The room was fitted with hidden cameras. Arnold told Cowan he had heard through the gang that Cowan had killed Daniel Morcombe. He said it didn't bother him, but he needed to know what exactly happened so he could fix any loose ends. Cowan said, "Yeah, okay, yeah, I did it." And then he told Arnold everything. The next day, Cowan flew back to Queensland with undercover police officers posing as Arnold's henchmen. He retraced the entire route from Nambour down the Nambour Connection Road, past the overpass, into the Christian Outreach Centre car park, along Kings Road to the abandoned property at Glasshouse Mountains. He pointed to where it happened and said, "That's where I thought he was going to run," and my arm went around his neck and I choked him out. I actually felt that break in there. On August 13, 2011, as Cowan stood in the bushland showing officers where he had left Daniel's body, Queensland detectives emerged from the trees. Brett "You're under arrest for the murder of Daniel Morcombe." Cowan said, "Yep, cool." On August 17, 2011, 4 days after Cowan's arrest, a right Globe brand shoe was found in the bushland. 3 days later, a second shoe. Then slowly over the following weeks, 17 bone fragments and items of clothing were recovered from the sand mining site and the waters of Cochin Creek. DNA was matched using Daniel's toothbrush. It took over a year for Daniel's remains to be released to his family. Legal proceedings had to run their course. On December 7, 2012, 9 years to the day since Daniel set out to catch that bus, more than 2,000 people attended his funeral at Siena Catholic College on the Sunshine Coast. Bruce and Denise had requested that Cowan's name suppression be lifted. They wanted the world to know who had done this. The trial began February 10, 2014. 116 witnesses, more than 200 exhibits, 1 month in the Supreme Court of Queensland. Cowan pleaded not guilty. He declined to give evidence. His defense argued that the confession to the fake criminal gang should be inadmissible. They argued that it was actually convicted pedophile Douglas Jackway who had killed Daniel. The jury rejected every word of it. On March 13, 2014, more than 10 years after Daniel disappeared, Peter Cowan was found guilty on all charges: murder, indecent treatment of a child under 16, interfering with a corpse. He sat emotionless as the verdict was read out. He was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 20 years, making him eligible in 2031. The sentencing judge looked at him and said, "I don't think you should be released in 20 years. Denise said that as the verdict was read, she remembered the promise she had made to Daniel, that she would get justice for him. She said as a family they never broke promises. The first thing she wanted to do was go and visit him and let him know that they hadn't let him down." His appeal was dismissed. His application to the High Court of Australia was refused. Every avenue exhausted. Peter Cowan is currently incarcerated at the Walston Correctional Centre. He has been attacked multiple times by fellow prisoners, boiling water thrown over him, burning his face, chest and legs. Stabbed on another occasion. Other inmates openly boasted he was to be bashed on sight. The last time Denise publicly commented on Cowan, she said simply, "I hope you have a life of loneliness and are unloved your entire life." In 2005, while Daniel was still missing, Bruce and Denise founded the Daniel Morcombe Foundation. It started as a way to keep Daniel's name alive and keep pressure on the investigation. It became something far greater. Today, the Daniel Morcombe Foundation is one of the most well-known child safety organizations in Australia. It provides free education programs and resources to parents, carers and educators across the country. It supports young people who are victims of crime. Every year on the last Friday of October, Day for Daniel, thousands of Australians dressed in red, the colour Daniel was last seen wearing. The day begins with a 4-kilometre walk, symbolising the walk Daniel was never able to take home. Schools hold safety talks, communities come together. Parents are encouraged to have conversations with their children about personal safety. After Cowan was convicted, Bruce and Denise tracked down Tim, the 7-year-old Cowan had assaulted at the daycare center in 1987, his first known victim. They wanted him to know that Cowan would never hurt anyone again. Daniel's twin brother Bradley honored him at his wedding, with older brother Dean carrying a photograph of Daniel so he could be a part of the big day. Bradley later welcomed a baby boy. His middle name is Daniel. Dean welcomed a little girl. She was born on the same day Day for Daniel was held. The family still lay a seat for Daniel at the Christmas table every year, his photograph by his chair. On December 31st, 2025, more than 22 years after Daniel disappeared, Queensland established its first ever public child sex offender register. They named it Daniel's Law. One Queensland commentator who grew up during this case said it best: "Before this, we slept with front doors open, kids played outside until dark, kids walked to school alone. This case well and truly changed our way of life in Queensland. The whole state is still in mourning." Daniel James Morcombe was born December 19, 1989. He was 13 years old when Peter Cowan took him from a bus stop on a Sunday afternoon. He wanted to buy Christmas presents for his family. Bruce and Denise Morcombe refused to let the world forget their son. They turned the worst thing that ever happened to them into something that has protected thousands of Australian children. At a memorial under the overpass where Daniel waited for that bus, flowers and candles and toys are still left to this day by strangers who never knew him, because in Queensland, in Australia, everyone knows Daniel. He would have been 35 years old this year, but as one person put it, he will always be forever 13. Rest in peace, Daniel Morcombe. Your family didn't let you down. This has been The Unknown Files. Thank you for listening to this episode of The Unknown Files. If you like to listen to cases just like this, please subscribe to the channel and like the video. This is Swanim. Thank you for listening again. Bye bye.